1,000 postcards saying, don't vote for Stefani, vote for this other person, this write-in person. But the day of the election came, and I got on my knees, and I really just wanted to do what the Lord would have me to do. That's my heart. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And so I said, Lord, just make it very clear, because I'm just not the brightest creature, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Just make it clear, Lord, what you want me to do. So I went to, that night we had a mutual friend was also running, and she was actually running. And I went to her election party, and they announced that she won. And then they looked at me and they said, and you won too, Stefani. And I was like, what? Now, the other interesting part, crazy part of the story is I was running against an 8-year well-known incumbent. But people in my community also knew what I stood for, right? So I have to wonder if that was...
Stefani, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
How's your day today?
It was awesome.
Good. Yep. I know you're busy right now. You're going all over the place, and you're I met you just a couple last week, and I know you were out there educating the community or educating the folks that were interested to run for office. You kind of encouraging them to jump in the race. It's not too late. Obviously, today is the last day. So, and I'm sure you were probably busy today all day helping those individuals to apply and everything. So, but thank you for coming on. We just wanted to invite you to kind of share about who you are, and you are a current member of a Canby School Board, and you wanted to hear your story. We hear it's a very interesting story and a crazy story, so we always like crazy stories. But before we start, we usually have Yaroslav quickly do a quick introduction for those listeners who may be tuned in for the first time of who is Slavic Vote and what we do, and maybe those who heard us for the first time.
Yeah, so we're 4 years old as an organization, that is. And yeah, so we started exactly close to 4 years ago. And the main reason was exactly what we're going to be talking about today. It was a topic that would have probably been brought up at school boards. So
if you ask Lily, she would say April 1st is the exact.
So she knows the dates. Yeah. The thing is, I'm also a homeschool parent. Yes. So I wasn't really open to that. Yeah. But yeah, so our organization kind of started going off of that. Not just the organization. I think the whole Slavic community woke up at that same time, and we kind of rode that wave because there was no representation. There was an issue, there was a problem, there was somewhat of a solution, but nobody to really implement it. And as we know, going out, marching, and going to Olympia sort of works, but in the long run, it has to be actual boots on the ground, people actually doing the legal stuff, as we call it, actually going out there and, taking positions or learning how to do that. Well, with the Slavic community, we realized that a lot of the population that lives in Oregon and Washington were not even registered to vote. So talking to them about candidates, talking to them about elections was kind of not beneficial for our community. So the first 2 years or 1.5 years, we literally just spent on the road. We went to every church we got invited to, sometimes 3-4 churches on a Sunday, trying to get people registered, running booths, getting different teams opened up in Spokane, some in California, just getting the Russian community to register so they can get the forms. The rest of year 2 and 3, I think we spent a lot on education, just telling the community that, hey, these are just regular people. There's nothing special about them that are running for these positions. So we educated, and we actually had some people, especially from the Seattle area, that ran for some really good positions. We sort of knew that maybe they wouldn't win, but that wasn't the point.
Right.
The point was to learn how to fill out that paperwork and get in there. And a lot of us realized, like Dimitri, and then he mentioned there was a founder's dad, Andre's dad. He also, and we figured out that the paperwork wasn't that bad. We thought it would be like just, 10 pages or something like that, but it was a lot easier than that. And then the last thing that we're kind of focusing on right now is activation, getting people activated, letting them know that, hey, you can go, do the school board thing. Just go to a school board meeting. It's kind of works like a church in a way. People come up there, stand up and say what they want to say, and people agree or tend to disagree. So this is where we're kind of at right now. We're trying to get the Slavic community community to actually go out there and do something. And we've had some really interesting runs. Like I know Bill Krasnogorov, he ran for
City Council,
for Happy
member.
Valley.
Okay.
And then Lori DeReamer.
Was a friend.
Was a friend of ours.
From the beginning.
It's just that we've seen a lot of shift and movement for the Slavic community because we came from a culture where, we came from communism. People didn't really vote. Things were decided and then they were kind of brought out to the public and the know-how. That's where we're at.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. And that's today's kind of another program of educating and just kind of bring awareness of what exactly it takes to run, what kind of work is it, and why it's important, and kind of everything in between. So if you want to just kick us off with introducing yourself really quick and who you are and your story of, you can go as far as when you were born, but whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. Well, I think I'm probably a good example when it comes to not anything special, right? I was just a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling my kids, and I saw some things going on in our community that I just couldn't believe were happening. And I also couldn't believe that nobody was doing anything about them. So I heard about Transgender Proclamation Day that one of the city council members wanted to do for Canby. Now, you have to remember, Canby has been a pretty conservative farming, agricultural type of community for a lot of years. And so, this was kind of a weird thing for a city councilor to want to do. And so a couple people and myself and my daughter went to a city council meeting and we said, let's not do a Transgender Proclamation Day. If you did one for transgenders, you'd have to do it for bisexuals and virgins, and that's not the city's place. This is silly.
Yeah.
And I was nice about it, but I was forthright. And very soon after that, I got a lot of hate coming my way. At the same time, congruently, I decided I got to do something more. I can't just talk at a city council meeting. I want to do something more. So my husband and I prayed about it, and I thought, I'm going to run for school board. I prayed about it, really didn't hear an answer, so I thought, I'm going to do it. Got all my information in, and then the hate really started coming after me. There was a couple people that would come to our office and to my farm and kind of harass my employees. And I thought, oh no, what did I get myself into, right? So I went down to the elections office and tried to withdraw my name, not knowing how all of this works, right? And they said, oh, you're a day too late. You're going to be in the race. Oh. So, So I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? So at the same time, we had a group of people working kind of with us. And I said, I don't want to do this. And so we decided to do a write-in campaign for somebody else. So we worked at that. I told everybody I knew, don't vote for me. Don't vote for me. I think the Republican Party sent out 3,000 postcards saying, don't vote for Stefani, vote for this other person, this write-in person. But the day of the election came, and I got on my knees, and I really just wanted to do what the Lord would have me to do. That's my heart. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And so I said, Lord, just make it very clear, because I'm just not the brightest creature, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Just make it clear, Lord, what you want me to do. So I went to, that night we had a mutual friend was also running, and she was actually running. And I went to her election party, and they announced that she won. And then they looked at me and they said, and you won too, Stefani. And I was like, what? Now, the other interesting part, crazy part of the story is I was running against an 8-year well-known incumbent. But people in my community also knew what I stood for, right? So I have to wonder if that was maybe another reason why I was elected. Although I know that God has me there in that place for now, for such a time as this.
Yeah, you were not lying. That was a crazy story.
Right? I told you.
That sounds like a miracle.
You guys were telling people to do write-ins, and you still won.
Yeah.
We got to try that for one of our candidates.
I don't know if you really want to try that. Yeah.
That's definitely a Moses story right there.
Totally a God story. All glory to him.
Yeah. That's awesome. And did you grow up, you mentioned you were homeschooling your kids, right?
Uh-huh.
Did you grow up in the homeschool environment?
No, I didn't. I went to 91 School, which is a little school right outside of Canby, in the Canby School District, till 5th grade. And then my parents pulled us out, and we went to a Christian school. And then I went to George Fox and got my bachelor's from there. So I kind of have a little bit of experience in multiple sectors of education.
Was there a reason why your parents pulled out?
Well, my mom just started smelling hints of things she wasn't okay with. This one curriculum, and I remember her talking about positive action. And this is a long time ago because I'm old. And she was like, yeah, this doesn't feel right anymore. I think we need to put you guys in a different environment. So
That reminds me of, I mentioned Heidi St. John. Similar, there's some similarities. And she kind of seen it, kind of from the beginning almost, before most people were even talking about it. So that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so currently, tell us about, this school board position. What exactly does it take to run for that? Or what exactly does it take? Why it's so important, and how much influence you have over kind of day-to-day stuff?
Oh, good questions. Well, to run for school board, the prerequisites are minimal. You don't have to be an expert in anything. You don't have to know a bunch of stuff. You don't have to be a lawyer. I mean, kind of now you have to know a little law as you get into it, but not much. You need to be 18 years old, and you need to be a taxpayer and live in the district that you're in. That's it.
For 12 months.
So just those two
for
requirements.
1 year. Yeah, for 1 year.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, you do have to be a resident for a year.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Well, so what made you decide to run? I know you mentioned some things that already, but kind of what was happening at the time, in the background as well?
Yeah, again, it was just looking at what was going on in our community and seeing some of the stuff that was coming out. I mean, I would talk to kids. The education is not happening, for one thing. I mean, we have I think the latest statistic was 66%, almost 66% of our second graders cannot read at grade average. We have 71% of kids second through eighth grade that cannot do basic math. And so there's not a lot of learning.
And I heard that Oregon had a law, might not be, I don't know, as far as Canby goes, but they actually lowered the bar to where you don't have to pass any...
it's like reading and math.
Reading and math are no longer required to actually make a passing. So it's interesting because you noted that you started homeschooling. Did you do that? Did your kids go to a public school at one point, or you started straight off from homeschooling?
So my kids actually went to a private Christian school from kindergarten and then we pulled them out in third grade and fifth grade. They were just not, it was a great school, great climate, but they were just not being challenged. And I told my husband, my sweet, awesome husband of 23 years, I told him, don't ever make me drive a minivan and don't make me homeschool my kids, and then I'll marry you. And that's what I said when we first got married. I was young and dumb. But that has transpired to be not the case, right? So I wanted my kids to be challenged, and then I prayed about it, and I really felt like the Lord gave me kind of an excitement for homeschooling. So my last kiddo just graduated from high school a year ago, and so I'm done. Yeah, and they're both at Liberty University. It's great, great college. There's actually very few colleges that I would feel safe sending my kids to anymore, but Liberty is one of those colleges.
Is Fox not on the list anymore for you?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I would never send my kids to George Fox.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting because, the first homeschool year was super tough.
Yeah.
Because mainly my wife was doing it because I was working at home. And I was like, I don't remember any of the stuff these kids are doing. I mean, just the math. I was like, wow, I got to redo this. But we kind of got a handle on it. But as far as your story, you're a homeschool mom and you're running for a school board. Does that happen very often when homeschool parents run for school boards? Is that like a first-time thing in history of Canby, or?
I don't know.
I've never heard of that before because it's like, I care enough about my children, but I also care about all the other kids and what, they're kind of going through.
Right.
And I think a lot of parents are feeling that right now because in our Slavic community, a lot of parents pulled out their kids.
Yeah.
It's to the point where a bunch of not private schools got formed, but more like communities that were running, like, let's say like they're doing a Becca and they would just get together.
Oh, I know Heidi's place probably has.
Yeah, and I think even Athey Creek did something similar to where they can just go out and interact on some subjects. So a lot of churches kind of came forward and helped out, but a lot of people moved out. And the Slavic community has been kind of to some degree very like, if you don't touch us, we won't. If you don't bother us, we won't do anything. You kind of took a slightly different approach, and I think that might have probably rubbed some parents the wrong way, because you're at homeschool mom, but you're running for the school board to change something in the school system. For the parents that in some cases can't do the homeschool, like if both parents are working and whatnot, because I've heard debates on that too. So that's just amazing. Did you get any feedback on that specifically on that case? Because it's like, what is she doing here? We've never seen her in the school. Yeah,
for sure. I got a lot of feedback. However, I think we have gone so far away from how we need to be running our communities that we've got to step up, homeschooling parents alike. I actually think it's our duty to step up as American citizens. You guys well know what a communist country looks like, right? And if we don't step up and we take back the control and we say we the people, then we are heading down a very scary road. So I feel like it's actually our duty to step up into these roles and try to make a change, because these kids that are in the school system, they are our future leaders. These kids are going to be the ones making laws and running our towns, things like that. So if anything, if you look at it as, I'm a taxpayer, I'm actually funding the public school education, I should have a say in how my dollars act.
That's a really good point. I just realized that. I'm paying for the public school taxes.
You are.
Well, that's why there's a big movement to do vouchers.
Yeah.
I think there's only one state in the U.S. I think it's like Ohio or something.
I think Arizona passed it, I think, as well. Or getting close to that. Or school choice initiatives. So that's a big movement right now all across the country.
Do you think that's even a solution? Like, if that happened, would there be enough competition to make the schools rethink, like public schools to rethink the curriculums?
So. For sure. I think it's a great idea. Now, it actually getting done and being passed is a whole nother ball game. It's a huge battle. But if it were to take place, it really emulates the free market, right? It emulates capitalism and choice. So you can actually take your kids to somewhere that the kiddos are going to get a decent and good education. Yeah. So I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I know they're, I think, like phase 2 now, the group that's doing. In fact, I know we're planning to have them on the radio as well sometimes in the future and share kind of what's been going on. And then I know there's Slavic community actually interested in it as well, because it'll be
a lot of people would.
Yeah, I think it's like the next best thing. If you can't homeschool, at least you can choose a school that you can go. Like in your current situation, if you were at a current situation, is there a school that you could even choose that is good?
Yeah, there are some good private schools in my area. There's Country Christian. I just actually went to their auction this Saturday, and it's a great school with great teachers. You know, when people are involved, there's never going to be a perfect place, but there are definitely a few good places. Now, I will say there are a lot of private schools, even Christian ones, that have kind of gone the woke way, I like to call
Fox.
It. That would be one of them. I have a couple stories. So for sure, I think that there are still some good schools out there. But, homeschooling, people kind of think of homeschooling in one way, right? The mom who's teaching her daughter how to make her dress and churn butter, right? Like, that's how a lot of people view homeschooling, and they still view it that way. But there are so many, I don't know one homeschooling family that actually homeschools the same way. There are pods. There are family get-togethers. You can do some online stuff. Heidi and her resource center is a fantastic place to go a couple times a week and get some, there's so many ways to do it. Yeah. And homeschooling is very effective. Within 1 year, my kids were both 5 grades ahead of their grade level when I had them tested. So, and we did school Monday through Thursday, 9 to 11:30. We literally spent 2, maybe 3 hours, 4 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like the first year, we thought our kids are going to flunk because they had to go. My wife specifically, I told her, do the state testing for that year for their age, and if they don't pass, we'll put them either in like a private school setting, or I even talked to Lily about that because I was kind of worried, and then or go back to public school. But they actually tested way above the average.
Interesting.
And I was like, wow. I mean, if parents can do it, they can do it.
Yeah, and it really doesn't take much time. So even people that, if you're a single parent or something like that, I still know families that had, a mom who worked, she was a single mom and worked 50 hours a week and still managed to homeschool her kids. Wow. So it can be done.
So go ahead.
Well, no.
I was just going to say, kind of rewind back a little bit. What is a day-to-day? Kind of what's your... how many hours does it take to be a school board member?
Yeah,
a week or a month, or like what's the requirements? What's the
time commitments?
Time commitments. Yeah,
that's always important.
Well, the good thing about the time commitment question is it really varies. So you can go to the meetings. Usually, there's, at least in Canby, there's 2 meetings a month, and they start around 6:30, and sometimes we end at 8:30 or 9:30. So it's a few hours, and you can read the agenda ahead of time and know how you're going to vote, and that's it. So really it's maybe 5 or 6 hours a month. You could even probably get by with a little less, or you can be a lot more involved. And I will say, I think you're a person that is more involved is a more effective school board member, because if they really dig in and find out some of the issues and they listen to teachers and they hear about what's going on, they're involved in curriculum choice, selection committees, things like that, then you can be more effective in the fact that what's going on more, and you can have more of a voice. But so, there are often we get invitations to 2 things a week, 2 events a week. And I rarely do that many because my family is most important. So you can stay as busy as you want on the school board, and you can really dwindle it down to just being there and making sure you vote the right way.
Right.
So, for example, I actually went to a school board meeting, and actually, I think it was the year right before we pulled all the kids out. And so the board members, are they the ones that were in our school board meeting? They were sitting up front. And there's actually parents that did, stand up and say, hey, can we read some of this stuff out of the curriculum? And it was like, yeah, some people were shocked, and it got pretty interesting. But so those would actually be the school board members. Would that be like a voluntary meeting for the school board? Or is that like a mandatory?
Well,
those type of meetings.
You need it's all about policy. So for as far as Canby is concerned, I think there's a certain amount of meetings that you can miss, but it's really not that stringent. So you need to go to both meetings in the month. But the people up front on the dais are the school board members. Often there's a superintendent and a secretary up there as well.
So the reason I'm saying this is that the 3 qualifications you mentioned, how long you live there, what was the second one? Citizen. The age, the tax-paying status. I'm saying I think maybe the 4th qualification would have to be thick skin.
Oh, yes.
And I think in this side, if you were doing things like what you're suggesting, with the curriculums and everything else, I think you would actually be on the side of most of the people, the majority that would be at these board meetings, or the school board meetings, like from the public, I mean.
From the public, for sure.
Yeah,
it depends on which district you're in, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think if you're smack center in Portland Public School, it might be a different story. But yeah, you really are speaking for the majority of voices.
So as far as the race goes, just amazing story. This is kind of funny in a way, but it's amazing. I would call it probably more of a miracle too.
Yeah.
How Canby? What's the population of Canby? Is it Canby? Because when I lived there, it was a pretty small town. Now it's probably I'm pretty sure it blew up.
Yeah, it's
everything else.
I wish I knew exactly.
Maybe like 50,000, maybe even more than that.
Yeah, I'd have to look, but it's definitely. I mean, we've got a Fred Meyer, so.
That's good.
The one on 99? Yeah. Or, okay.
No, I was trying to be funny. It's we blown up a little Freddy's. We made it on the map. No, it's I think like our school sports are 6A. Okay. So, it's a decent sized community.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I mean, I'm trying to compare it to a city. I think it'd probably be the size of probably even bigger than Clark County, maybe in Washington. I'm from Washington. Yeah. So as far as the race goes, do they provide like numbers how much you won by? Or
yeah, you can go to the elections website and look up all that information.
So how was that for your race? And what was the surprise? Yeah, was it close? Was it like?
I think it was pretty close, but I still won. I mean, definitely there was no question. So
that was 4 years ago. Is that correct?
That was 4 years ago.
So now you're running for re-election. This is the cycle.
I am.
So you have a couple months left until you know for sure. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? You think you're You're going to get it?
I have no idea. I don't know. The funny thing is we have some competition this time that is more from that middle of the road, kind of the people that have, they're good people, but like you mentioned, backbone. You have to have a backbone if you want to get things done. And I find that a lot of school boards just rubber stamp things through because often you're sitting there, they give you a presentation, and then there's a vote, and you have to vote on that presentation. And usually it kind of goes in the favor of whatever way the administration wants you to vote. And they bring information, they bring whatever to you. And so it takes a backbone, because if you choose to not vote the way that you're being encouraged to vote, it's uncomfortable. And then people look at you kind of like, well, why didn't you vote for that?
From the other board members.
Yeah.
How do you get over that?
Wow. So for Canby, how many board members are we talking about?
So it's a 7-person board in Canby.
7. Okay.
And how I get over that?
Yeah.
And this is the key, right? Ready for the key?
Tiebreaker?
No, how you get over,
Okay, yes.
I don't care what people think. I care what God thinks. That's how I get over that. I had a little bracelet made for both Dawn and Sherry. These are the two like-minded people that think the way I do. And it says audience of one. So I really just care what God thinks. And I've really learned not to care what people think.
So what gave you that courage? Was there something that you just grew up with, or it was something you went through and you built up? What does it take to build up a courage?
I was a feisty child. I think I've always just been a little bit of a warrior kind of person. I mean, I used to teach women self-defense and take Krav, and I'm a little bit more, God made me that way. And it really took almost 40 years for me to realize that's not a bad thing, especially when you're standing up for the truth. A lot of times in the Christian world, we've really complicated, or we've taken out of context loving, we do love, God is love, but there's also a time to tell the truth in love, but we still got to tell the truth, right? So by not telling the truth, we're doing a huge disservice. And so God made me that way. That's the long answer of that. He made me that way, and I've just kind of come into my own with that, and I've realized, you know what? We need people with backbones that will sometimes say the unpopular thing. I don't know if you've seen that show, The Chosen. Have you seen that? You know how the fish goes backwards?
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
I always feel like that opposite fish in there, right? And then I think, okay, that's a good thing, right? So, yeah, that's how I view it. Is I just want to please my Father.
Well, shout out to the show The Chosen. So if you haven't seen it, you have to see it.
So good.
I know I try to tell everybody about it because I know it has some controversies, but I love it.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion, right?
Past the first season, the first episode.
You have to watch it, the whole thing.
We'll get there.
Did you see the pilot? That's my favorite.
No.
Oh, that's what will hook you, is when the shepherd sees the... Oh, you guys, it's really good.
My brother says the Nicodemus one is the best one.
So good, yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a good one, yeah.
But, so school boards. So with the Russian community, they just, you kind of explained to us as far as, the qualifications, pretty much, anybody can do this.
Yes.
We have to have thick skin. What else was kind of new to you? I know the whole position was new, but what else did you...
Learning curve, I
guess.
What
was the learning curve, I would say? Once day one, you went in and you won the position. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, I had to be very careful not to be brainwashed myself. Okay?
Ooh.
So as soon as you go into this position, they want to send you to all these trainings by OSBA, Oregon School Board Association.
Write that down.
And this is a really left-leaning. They're made out to be this organization that's an advocate of school board members.
I'm not a fan of them.
No, me neither.
So did they make it sound like they were mandatory trainings?
They made it sound like they were mandatory. And I said, and then you have to ask the questions. And I said, do I have to go to this? Well, you don't have to, but you really should. I'm like, okay. And then I went around and I looked at what they stood for and started getting their emails. And I thought, no way.
So was that more of an organization that just teaches, you the ropes of the school board?
They do trainings.
supposed to?
They have an arm that's a law arm, so they will often bring lawyers into situations that you need a law perspective on.
Was there a more conservative option for that?
No, there's not. But I'm glad you asked because a couple friends of mine and I'm sure you've heard Newberg in the news. Dave is a good friend of mine, and he and I and a couple other people started looking into an alternative, and so we created one. It's not in its finished stages because it's a very complicated process. We still need to figure out some pieces to it, but we're hoping within a couple years we'll have an alternative version of OSBA.
Are we talking about just for Oregon, or are you thinking larger?
Well, Oregon first, but we'd love to pass on the ideas.
I've heard of Newberg, and then I've actually heard of what happened in Canby, and now we're meeting you. But this was 4 years ago. I remember somebody mentioned there's something going on in Canby, and it was all over.
Well, we'll have Dave Brown. I'm trying to nail him schedule because he's
So
busy
is
on
this
Thursdays.
something that you're noticing just on the outskirts of the major cities like Portland? This is happening, this kind of battle, or did everybody in the inner cities already give up on the school boards, or what?
Yeah, I don't know about the inner cities, but definitely it's a battle. And when you look at it for what it is, I also want to state it's a spiritual battle because we are not fighting against flesh and blood. We're fighting against principalities of darkness, which it's some of the ideologies that they're trying to teach and all of these things. So as far as where it's going on, I kind of think it's everywhere. It's not just in Oregon and close to Portland. I've even heard it in Idaho and other places too. It's definitely a fight right now.
Yeah,
it will continue to be so.
For sure. And the Oregon School Board Association. Tell us. Did you even try to see what kind of resources they offer, or you just kind of completely ignored your?
Yeah, I looked on their website. They had a couple good things as well. But as long as you can read, you can figure out most of this stuff on your own.
This is a group. Didn't they? I don't know if they exactly what they did, but didn't they try to make the parents I guess proclaim the parents to be the terrorists?
Oh, the terrorists.
Is that them?
So I think that was a union, and I believe that was more of the National Education Union. I don't know which one. But they're kind of all closely tied. You would be amazed at how. And so we go back to what do you need to know and what was the learning curve? The learning curve was realizing that my vote does matter and I don't have to vote the way they want you to vote all the time, that I think for myself and I read what is going on, what policy they want to push or whatever it's going on, and really have a clear understanding for myself. Right. So you do need to be an independent thinker. You can't be somebody that just goes with the flow. Right?
So just a quick question for our listeners. Are all these voting scenarios that you're talking about, are they written just like the voting pamphlets? Because that's terrible. That's going to require a lawyer, for sure.
They're almost kind of worse in some ways because So let's go over, if you don't mind, what a school board member can actually do. Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Okay. So school board members can hire and fire superintendents. Okay. The second thing is they approve budgets. And the third thing, and I think one of the most valuable thing is they write policy and change policy. They're policymakers.
Elaborate on that a little bit. What exactly is policy for those who might not understand?
Sure. Policy is basically the set of rules or standards how everything is ran by. Everything
itself.
It's like the foundation of the rules of the school system itself.
So that encompasses the curriculums, or that's a different.
So there's a lot that is said in policy regarding curricula. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So they set guidelines for everything.
Yeah, it's a set of guidelines, and it always goes back to that. So the school boards of yesteryear used to be able to do a lot more things. They had a lot more power, and with legislation and the wrong people in power, that local level of power has diminished hugely. So it really has dwindled into these three things. Even the hiring and firing of superintendents was changed a little bit in legislation because of basically the situation in Newberg. Yeah, so
and that's still a good amount of power,
It's still a good amount of power.
It'd be better to it's better we have good people in that position and have that than not at all.
Right.
So what happened in Newburgh versus like the Canby situation?
So we've had a lot of different situations in Canby, so you might have to tell me which one you're referring to. But in Newburgh, ultimately they wanted to take down all the flags except for the American flag. So under Oregon law, and I can't remember which one, we do have a law in Oregon that states that we have to have a United States flag in the classroom and that kiddos say the Pledge of Allegiance once a week. The teachers
Used to be once a day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
I
a
remember
class.
I have to look it up. It might be
I might
once a
just be
day
really
still,
old.
but I know it's at least once a week.
When I was going to school, it was every day.
Yeah.
Got to look that one up. That's why it's so important to know law. So they wanted to take down, so the teachers were starting to bring all these flags. I mean, you could hardly even, it was just a colorful, the teachers were bringing in their political views and their political ideologies in the classroom.
Oh, I see.
And so what the school board said is we want to remove all of those learning distractions out of the environment and just create just a neutral environment with just the American flag. And that didn't go so well. There was a lot of controversy over that, just trying to remove politics out of the classroom.
And the last thing I heard, they got sued and they lost that case. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe they lost.
So
Yeah, but they made a huge step forward, and they showed the rest of Oregon, and I believe the rest of the country, what we need to be doing. And that really is using the law for our advantage.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So besides
policymaking.
the whole sexualization of minors and everything else, now politics are starting to shift in to the classrooms.
Yeah, for a long time.
Where's the learning going to happen?
There isn't any learning.
Yeah, it's just really amazing because we have even our operator, Anton, he still is going to, I think, middle school.
High school.
And
I think it's high school. now.
high school or...
Either way, I guess. Yeah.
We can bring him over here. But yeah,
Yes.
so, and I'm just asking, because we used to be able to write ourselves out of like health class for those specific scenarios. And now from what they're telling us, it's like you can't get out of it. It's like they'll show it to you no matter, which class you're in.
Well, it's in your face. It's even in the
very,
libraries. I won't open this book, but I did bring one to kind of, I don't know if you've heard of this book, Gender Queer. We found this in the library December of 2021. So this is how long we've been fighting this particular battle.
Oh, okay.
And I really feel like people need to see it to actually get the shock value of how bad it is. So I won't show it
Yeah.
here.
Well,
But
if you're on social media, it's been circulating.
oh,
on
has
social
it?
media.
The
Yeah.
actual pictures
Yeah.
in it? Okay. And it is so, so bad and so offensive. So we found this book. One of our, I won't say who, but a very close friend of mine, her daughter found it in the school library and brought it home. And she's like, do you think this is appropriate? And I looked at it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that this is in our library. So right now, talking about having a backbone, now that I'm running again, just a few days ago, somebody put out a new website called Barbie Book Ban or Book Ban Barbie or something like that because they said, I want to ban books. Well, it's not that we want to ban books. We just want to remove the sexually explicit and obscene material from our libraries. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I know that Newburgh has done a lot of good work, and you guys are continuing, and I hope more districts and more school boards kind of start, because it seems like when we watch these school board hearings by parents, a lot of times these school boards they just don't care what parents say.
Right.
And it was really refreshing to see Newburgh kind of step up, and then and Canby as well, and I hope there's more. And I think it's because parents are stepping up and running.
Absolutely.
And then some teachers like in Newburgh.
So we can actually create policy. So that's one thing I want to do is if we get the majority this time around is we will be able to say, we're going to create a policy, no more sexually explicit material in the library. And then we will tell our administration, you need to enforce this. And if they don't enforce it, then we'll,
So just kind of the details. What you're talking about creating policies. What is that process like? Is it something just an idea that comes up and then everybody votes on it? What's the time frame for policies? Since the term sounds like it's a 4-year, right?
Yeah, actually, you can create policy. You sit down and you create the policy. So another thing about OSBA is they give you all your fall policies and spring policy updates that are reflected from the legislature and what they passed. and you're supposed to pass those things. And there's some that are required, some that are not, and that's a whole ball game too. You got to know what's required, what's not. ODE always sends down guidance, but you have to realize what is required and what's not required. So as far as policy is concerned, you can literally sit down and write a policy, and then you make a motion to approve the policy. You have a second and discussion and vote. And I mean, it's really that simple. It has to work within the confines of the law. And I will tell you that I always talk to a lawyer before even voting on anything controversial, just to kind of, it's good to have a lawyer that you know. Pacific Justice Institute, I don't know if you guys have heard of them. They're awesome. I've called them so many times. It's a free resource for people like me who don't want to dish out thousands of dollars for every question, you know.
I get their emails.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a great, I can't even tell you how wonderful they are.
The head of, I don't remember his name.
I forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget the name.
He was it's when you're trying to remember the name, it doesn't. But he was actually on their show, wasn't he? From.
I think so, but I forget right now. Yeah.
They're when we found that source,
You're talking about Mark
amazing. Yeah, Mark Malosha. Yeah. He was part of that group.
So he was part of the Washington Institute, the Family Institute.
Oh, the Family
Family
Institute.
Institute,
Might be a little bit different. Yeah, but they somehow connected us to that organization.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, because just if you get their newsletters, they kind of say what they're working on, and it's just amazing what they've been doing for people.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful to have some resources when you do get on the school board to kind of know, okay, I can call Pacific Justice Institute for that resource. I can reach out to the Canby School Board. These three, I know they could steer me in the right direction. You know, it's good to slightly understand policy, at least read it through before you get on the board. And it's super boring, but I do feel like it's a work unto Jesus, right? We're looking at the policy. We're like, okay, this should go, this should stay, things like that. So there's actually a lot you can do regarding policy.
And you can you take away some of the policies that were passed in the past?
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned somewhat about the board majority. Can you speak a little bit about the current lineup of the board? What is in general? How does the board usually look like? What kind of people? Is there I know there's a chair probably.
Yep.
And then just what are some of the, I guess, responsibilities for each board member?
Sure. You know, it really is pretty simplistic. It's to come to the board meetings prepared. We look at the agenda. We know we have questions ready if we have questions for presentations. That's actually very effective too, is asking good questions. And then when they don't answer them, to ask them again and again and again until you force an answer. So coming to the meetings prepared, reading through the agendas. What was the other part of your question?
So there's a chair of the board, right?
Oh, yeah. There's a chair. There's a vice chair. Then the rest of them just are directors is what they're called. Yeah.
And so you mentioned, OSBA, and then there's the Oregon Education Association, whatever
There's different unions, yeah.
And then there's also the actual board, not the board, but the Oregon Education group that kind of oversees the education in Oregon.
Oregon Department of Education, yes.
How much power they have over the school board, or is it separate? Like they can't really dictate what you guys do.
They do have some authority in some ways, but that's again part of that fact finding is kind of untangling the web of what you have to do, and really it boils down to the law, right? What did the legislature pass? What does our law say? And then following those guidelines. But they will often come up with, guidelines that are suggested or encouraged. One was that recently was that if a child wants to transition to a different gender, that if the teacher or the staff member doesn't think that the child feels safe telling their parents, then they don't have to tell the parents that this child is essentially transitioning. And this is guidance given by Oregon Department of Education. That wasn't law, but that was guidance. From my understanding, I don't think a law has been passed.
And that's a non-elected board, essentially, or non-elected department, right?
Yeah.
They have so much authority.
They have a lot of authority. There's a lot of organizations, LMNOP organizations, that have a ton of authority that are not elected.
That's appointed by the governor.
Yes, so I do believe that one is appointed by the governor.
Right. So
I think wasn't she even a director of the Oregon?
Maybe.
Something like that? I don't know.
So within the 4 years that you've been there, what would you say the percentages of some new ideas that were proposed or the quantity? I'm just kind of thinking, is this just a lot of reading? And how many ideas got repealed that were active? What's the ratio like?
So that's a good question. I don't know if I could give you details on the ratio. I will say there was a few things that we tried to do. Mm-hmm. One was we tried to remove, Dawn and I, this is before my friend Sherry got on the board, we tried to remove cell phones from the classroom just during instructional time. So we weren't the bad guys that were taking the cell phones away during lunch or in the hallways, but we noticed that kids were always on their phones, on Facebook, Snapchat, all the apps, and they weren't paying attention to the teachers. So we created a policy, and it didn't.
I can't believe they have cell phones in.
Oh, it gets worse. So we created this policy, and you know who was resistant to it? The teachers.
Why?
The head of the union. They said that kids need their cell phones because they often will source things in class and say, "Hey, look up this." And I said, okay, well, that makes kind of sense, but don't they have, every child in the Canby School District is issued an iPad. They're like, well, they don't come to school with their iPads charged.
So teachers don't want to teach them. They're kind of offloading it on the kids.
Because deduce what you will.
With Chat GPT, you don't need a teacher.
No, you can have it write a paper for you.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up teachers unions a couple of times, so I wanted to maybe tell us about the teachers unions a little bit, and what your experience with them, and are they good, are they bad? Most people don't even hear about teachers unions and how much of an influence they have. My personal opinion is that they are one of, if not the most influential entity that affects a lot of things that are going on. Teachers unions used to look out for just for the good of the teachers, right? And teachers were looking out for the good of the students. There is so much money that goes into the teachers unions. And even when, like right now, they're determining who they're going to endorse for candidacy for school board races. And I think, don't quote me, but I think that they can give funds to candidates as well. You can imagine
like
they don't.
PAC?
They won't give me one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
For sure.
And I will never get their endorsement. I will say we have so many good teachers, okay? So when I talk about teachers and teachers unions, I really, really want to reiterate, we have a lot of wonderful teachers, a lot of them. But there are also a lot of teachers that are going to these colleges that are being brainwashed, and they're being brainwashed into teaching certain ideologies. And that's sad. So the unions have a lot of influence.
Right. Have you experienced them firsthand? Did they ever threaten you? I know, like, for example, in Newburgh, we talked about Newburgh. They were very involved in the recalls. We haven't even talked about that yet. But, like, how much were they involved in maybe going against you, or just the policies that you were trying to pass? Were they outspoken about those things?
I would say they didn't directly go after me that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were, funny business going on there. Right. I don't know exactly what, their influence is in my race is. I know they're not supporting me, but as far as just the unions in general, they can influence a lot.
Right.
But I also want to say that teachers under Oregon law do not have to be a part of a union.
That's right.
They can withdraw their membership. I don't know. You probably know all the ins and outs and details of how they can do that, but
and that's a national thing too. You can do that. Any state can do that. So
okay, it's a national thing. Good to know.
Yeah. So well, that's good to know. I know we're pretty much coming to an end of our program, and I asked all the questions that I wrote down, so I appreciate you answering all those. Yaroslav, do you have anything that was pressing?
Was very informative. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I hope our listeners learned a lot. Is there anything you wanted to also share that maybe we haven't talked about it yet? I
would just say, if you want to make a difference, running for a local election does make a difference, and pray about it. Ask the Lord to send you where he wants you to go. It might not be in that position. It might be in a different position, but make the most of your time here on earth. Let's invest the talents and treasures he's given us for something, that's eternal.
Right.
So if that's running for school board, do it. And give me a call. I'll help you.
Yes, you can always, definitely. We always encourage, reach out to us. We will connect you with individuals like you, and then anybody else that we know that would be beneficial. So, our Slavic community is listening to us. Is there anything on top of what you said already you want to tell the Slavic community directly?
I would just say, I'm so glad that you're registering to vote. I'm so glad that you're getting educated on what's going on in America. And I would just urge you to take that last step and really get involved. Like I just said, run for school board, run for local county election. You can even run for parks and planning commission. And there's a lot of ways to be integrated into our society. And we need to do that, right? We absolutely need to stand up. Your voice matters. And I would just say, get involved. Get involved.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you. I just want to remind folks, if you want to learn more about how to get involved and how to learn more about some of these things, you can always visit our website. We have some resources there. We have some previous programs about how to run and some more things that we go in depth on our website, slavicvote.org, where you can learn more. There's also, like I said, previous videos that we've made before. And some of the resources about which candidates are most aligned with the Slavic community. Mm-hmm. We put out a resource that is made by SV Action, a nonprofit that does, in a sense, a kind of recommendations on some of the candidates that are best aligned with the Slavic community. Mm-hmm. So if folks are listening and they want to know who those are when the election is on the way, we'll have that information on there.
Yeah, and then also if you have your information, you can hear that right now.
Exactly.
So anybody that's listening in Canby, if these waves are reaching you.
We can learn more about you. Yeah.
Sure. WeDemandExcellence.com is our website. And I'm running as a slate. I'm running with us, Dawn Deppner, Lori Boatwright, and myself. And you can really know our platform is to bring academics back to clean up our libraries, for complete transparency, parent collaboration, and we all three really stand for biblical morals and values. So that's where we align on that.
And all those three names, are those all incumbents? The current?
Dawn is going after her seat again, as is I am. And then the other one is, she's new to this, but she has a backbone of steel. She'll be awesome. Lori Boatwright, Dawn Deppner, and me, Stefani Carlson.
I know I've heard of one of the names.
Yeah.
So that's good. So, and this time you're running that you're actually trying and you actually want to do it.
No write-ins.
No write-ins. No. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, I go back to ranching, right? So it'll be okay. God's got it. He's got it in His control. He's sovereign.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the environment we live in is a lot crazier than 4 years ago.
It's way crazier. Yeah. It just keeps getting crazier. Right. But we know the end of the book, right?
Right. Yeah. For sure. Well, thank you once again for all of our listeners. I just want to remind also, if you tuned in a little bit later, I mentioned briefly about a survey that is circulating right now that is made by the Clark County here in Vancouver, Washington. If you live there, if you are either an immigrant, if you're a new immigrant, if you're a refugee from the Ukraine and are looking for resources, they're seeking your guys' information on what kind of resources you're looking for, what kind of help you're looking for. So if you are an immigrant or an immigrant, a refugee from Ukraine, please let us know and we will tell you where to find this information. We will. You can either go on our website or you can go on our Instagram page. You can go on our Facebook and message us. We will send you that link. You can also text or call the following number, and we'll also give you that information. So if you are interested, go ahead and call or text 971-244-2228, and we will send you that link to where you can fill out the actual survey. And last week we actually started announcing about this, and we actually had people reach out and interested, and they were going to share with their friends and their family, and they had some kind of group that can share with more people. So this is going to be very important. Again, if you have family that's refugees from Ukraine, we want to make sure they have the resources that they need. And there's funds. You just need to speak out and request those as well. So again, 971-244-2228. If there's nothing else, you guys, is there any last things you guys wanted to say?
You guys are awesome.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Greetings to the rest of the board, and we would love to sometimes hear from them as well. And good luck on the race.
Thank you.
Yaroslav?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in to Slavic Vote Live. We'll find you next time. Thank you.